The sky over Australia had never looked so strange. It was the end of an ordinary afternoon in Sydney, the sun dipping below the horizon, painting the clouds orange and red, when suddenly something unexpected began to manifest. High above the sea, a brilliant, luminous formation shone in colors that couldn't be described merely as atmospheric reflections. Some witnessed sounds like trumpets echoing in the wind, while others claimed a humanoid figure was outlined among the clouds. Within minutes, hundreds of cell phones were raised, and videos flooded social media. "I've never seen anything like it in my life," said a woman in shock. Another user wrote online, "Is this what the Bible had already prophesied?" And the question resonating in thousands of hearts was, are we witnessing a sign from God? The images spread across the world. Secular newspapers tried to explain the phenomenon as a rare atmospheric effect. Scientists spoke of electrical discharges in the clouds, but nothing seemed to satisfy the collective anguish. It wasn't just what was seen, it was what was felt. Many reported a heaviness in the air, others wept without understanding why. "I was in the car with my kids when I saw the light open in the sky. My heart raced. It felt like the world was going to end right there," recounted a shaken father. Within hours, the hashtags "You Sign of God" and "The Australia Sky" were among the top trending topics on Twitter, with comments split between skepticism, fear, and faith. "If this isn't a divine warning, then what is?" asked a young man in a viral video. But that was just the beginning. In the days that followed, Australia began to record unusual events that seemed to build into a larger narrative. First, signs in the skies. A sequence of unexpected auroras in the south of the country, visible even in Melbourne, where they had never been recorded with such intensity. Experts attributed it to increased solar activity, but for many Christians, the explanation was clear. There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars, as Jesus said in Luke 21. Then, signs on the earth. Mild but constant earthquakes began to shake regions not located on major tectonic faults. An entire field in Queensland split open with cracks, and residents reported hearing a sound from the depths, like an underground roar. "It was as if the earth was screaming," said a farmer. While nature seemed to destabilize, signs also emerged in society. Australia, known for its political stability, faced violent protests in the streets of Canberra, where thousands marched against new digital surveillance measures. The government had announced a trial of a national digital currency tied to biometric identity systems. For some, it was merely a technological advancement, but for others, it was a direct foreshadowing of what John described in Revelation 13. "And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead." A local preacher declared before cameras, "We are seeing the framework of the mark of the beast being built before our eyes." And that wasn't all. Mysterious reports began circulating among Christian communities about trumpet-like sounds heard not only in Sydney, but also in Perth and Adelaide. People recorded the sky, and the videos captured a metallic sound, as if a celestial army were blowing invisible instruments. "It was terrifying and glorious at the same time," said a young woman who shared her video on TikTok. The comments were filled with verses from Joel 2. "Blow the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm on my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord is coming, it is near." With each new event, scientific explanations lost strength in the face of the collective feeling that something greater was happening. It was as if reality itself was tearing open, exposing humanity to what had always been written, but that many insisted on ignoring. Churches in Australia began to fill as they hadn't in decades. Pastors reported lines of repentant people pleading for prayer. "They're not coming out of curiosity, but out of desperation," said a Christian leader in Brisbane. "It feels like the prophetic clock is ticking, and God is calling his people to awaken." The shock reached its peak when, one early morning, satellites recorded a massive light forming over the Australian desert, visible even from space. The phenomenon lasted only a few minutes, but was enough to ignite theories. Some spoke of secret military tests, others of an electromagnetic phenomenon. But in Christian communities, the comparison was immediate to the pillar of fire that guided the people of Israel in the desert. Just as in Exodus, God may be showing that he remains present and active among his people, preached an emotional pastor. Everything seemed to align: skies, earth, society, and technology, like pieces of a prophetic puzzle pointing to the end times. The signs were not isolated but interconnected, forming a narrative reminiscent of the words of Matthew 24. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, plagues, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows, and many in Australia began to wonder, if this is just the beginning, what comes next? At that moment, the whole world turned its eyes to Australia. The country seemed to have become a spiritual stage, a visible sign that the scriptures were being fulfilled before our eyes. And each new video that emerged, each report of strange sounds, each burst of light in the skies, fueled the sense that the apocalypse was no longer just a distant prophecy, but an emerging reality. Authorities tried to maintain calm. The Australian government called on scientists, astronomers, and even the military to investigate the phenomena. Official reports mentioned unusual atmospheric anomalies and natural acoustic phenomena amplified by geography. But to the population, the responses seemed too cold in the face of the intensity of what they were experiencing. After all, how could one explain thousands of people in different regions hearing the same metallic sound from the sky at the same time? How could one justify giant cracks opening in the earth in previously stable areas, or the sudden appearance of auroras in skies that had never known them before? The secular media oscillated between skepticism and sensationalism. TV programs interviewed experts who spoke of collective illusions and social hysteria. But meanwhile, churches streamed live services to millions proclaiming, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is near." And in every service, verses rang out like well-aimed arrows. There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars, and on the earth distress of nations. Luke 21:25. It was no longer just theory, it was experience. People saw, heard, and felt in their bones what once seemed distant. And the escalation didn't stop. Days later, an unexpected cyclone struck Australia's northern coast with unprecedented violence. Homes were destroyed, trees uprooted, and roads swallowed by water. Amid the chaos, residents claimed to have seen a figure of light hovering in the sky among black clouds, as if observing everything. The images, though blurry, spread across social media, and many swore it was an angel. For others, it was collective delusion, but the spiritual impact was overwhelming. "I was losing everything in that storm," said a mother of 3, "but when I looked up and saw that light, my heart filled with peace. I felt God was with me." During the same period, researchers announced something even more disturbing. A series of mysterious symbols were found carved into rocks in the Australian desert, in a previously unexplored region. The drawings appeared to depict celestial figures, flames, trumpets, and something resembling an open book. Archaeologists tried to link them to Aboriginal traditions, but Christian leaders pointed out similarities to biblical descriptions. "The open book reminds me of Revelation 10, where the angel descends with a book in his hands," said a preacher. "Is God confirming his word through signs even in stone?" The tension grew because each new discovery seemed to reinforce a single narrative. The world was being prepared for something big. And in the hearts of many Christians, the conviction was clear. The return of Jesus was near. These were not just isolated events, but a perfect mosaic of signs pointing to the culmination of history. "Everything we see today in Australia is just part of a global scenario," said a theologian. "The Bible speaks of wars, rumors of wars, famines, and plagues. Australia is the stage, but soon the whole world will be shaken." And indeed, global news seemed to align with this picture. While Australia's skies trembled, armed conflicts erupted in the Middle East. Reports of new viruses alarmed Asia. The global economy faltered, and the digital market grew at a frightening pace. The announcement of Australia's digital currency was not isolated. In Brussels, New York, and Beijing, the same was being discussed. "We are moving toward a unified global economy," said an economic analyst on TV. But for Christians attuned to the scriptures, the echo was different. The system of the beast was taking shape. Meanwhile, Australian churches reported miracles amid the chaos. People being healed in prayer vigils, young people receiving visions, children reporting prophetic dreams. A pastor in Perth shared that a 7-year-old girl with no biblical knowledge said before hundreds, "Jesus is coming back, get ready." The entire auditorium wept. "God chooses the small to shame the great," the pastor commented. It was as if the Spirit was being poured out on all flesh as prophesied in Joel 2. And then came what many considered the climax of the sequence. In the silent early hours of 3:33 a.m., Sydney residents reported a boom from the sky, followed by a light that cut across the firmament from end to end. It was as if the sky itself had torn open, said a journalist on duty. Security cameras captured the scene, an intense white light lasting exactly 7 seconds, and then a deep sound, like the blast of a trumpet. Scientists spoke of meteors, but the calculations didn't add up. The timing, the intensity, the sound, nothing fit. Pastors wasted no time. God is speaking to us. 3:33 is no coincidence. Jeremiah 33:3 says, "Call to me, and I will answer you, and show you great and mighty things which you do not know." And the light that tore through the skies was interpreted as a call to cry out to God before it's too late. Churches opened their doors even in the early hours, and believers gathered to pray. Social media filled with videos garnering millions of views. The impact wasn't limited to Australia. Across the world, Christians in Brazil, the US, and Africa began sharing the images with captions, "Jesus is coming back." The spiritual atmosphere in Australia became unbearably charged. People reported vivid dreams, visions of fire, and even demonic manifestations in homes. Pastors were called to cast out spirits in entire neighborhoods. The shock was not only natural but spiritual. As Paul said in Ephesians 6:12, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places." It was as if the final battle was approaching, and somehow Australia had become an epicenter of signs. In this scenario, one question echoed everywhere. What if this is truly the prelude to the end? Because if Jesus warned, as in Matthew 24, that these things were just the beginning of sorrows, then what could be expected of the full sorrows? Many who were once indifferent now wept at altars. Young people who mocked their parents now cried out, "What must I do to be saved?" Pastors reported mass repentance, marriages being restored, families praying together again. It was as if the torn skies had also opened hearts. But alongside the spiritual awakening, mockery grew. Atheist groups scoffed, claiming it was all religious manipulation. Scientists dismissed the videos as frauds or exaggerations, and political leaders called for calm, saying the population shouldn't be swayed by fanaticism. Yet how could one ignore thousands of witnesses? How could one dismiss videos, sounds, cracks, lights, and signs that were before everyone? The conflict between faith and reason grew ever more intense, and the country seemed divided between those who saw only coincidence and those who saw prophetic fulfillment. And it was in this crossfire that one final revelation came to light. Leaked documents suggested that authorities were already investigating similar signs on other continents, but preferred to keep it secret to avoid panic. This further inflamed Christians, who saw confirmation that the signs were not confined to Australia, but part of a global plot. The prophetic clock was ticking, and no one could stop it. And so, in the face of so many signs, only one question remains. Are we ready? The heavens speak, the earth groans, society crumbles, and technology rises as a foreshadowing of the mark of the beast. Jesus had already warned, "Watch, for you do not know the day or the hour." The time is not tomorrow, it is now. Every soul must decide where they will stand when the sky opens for good. The trumpets are sounding. The warning has been given. But you, will you be ready when Christ returns?